Good evening, everyone. Thank you, each and everyone, for being here with us today. I am Dr. Rohit Bartake, and we would like to extend a special welcome to our guest, Dr. Tony Nader. It's an honor to have you here, so please welcome Dr. Tony Nader. Dr. Tony Nader received his medical degree from the American University of Beirut. He has PhD in brain and cognitive science, is from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He was a clinical research fellow in neurology at the Massachusetts General Hospital, Harvard Medical School, and assistant director of the Clinical Research Center at MIT. He is the founder and editor-in-chief of the International Journal of Mathematics and Consciousness. His interest in enlightenment and full human potential led him to the practice of transcendental meditation, and he soon began working very closely with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. And it's very significant to me today that when Maharshi Ji passed away in 2008, he took his Mahasamadhi. Then he asked Dr. Nader to be the individual who would oversee all the research, all the programs, meditation programs, non-profit meditation programs in 120 countries, and now he heads Maharshi's International Transcendental Meditation Organization. So I welcome you on the stage, Dr. Nader.
My interest as a scientist, a medical doctor, has gone into developing the full potential of human life. And I tried this from the side of neuroscience, brain science, cognitive sciences. I've studied psychiatry and neurology and went to these universities. And I felt that what was most promising in making my life personally better, and through the research that I have done, was a simple technique called transcendental meditation that allows the mind to settle down and experience its deeper levels of being. At the same time, the physiology improves, the mind is clearer, there is greater happiness, greater peace, and ability to act and perform in a very effective way. I've been through civil wars during my medical training and have seen how much being anchored in oneself actually makes a difference, rather than being a football of situations and circumstances, where our well-being, our happiness, our ability to perform depends on so many outside factors. Somebody's happy, makes you happy. Somebody's upset, you are upset. You lose something, you are sad. You have something, you have anxiety, you have fears. And the mind is jumping like that in an unstable way. Whereas we have something within us that is ultimate stability, ultimate strength, and that is our true inner self. And that is our what we call pure consciousness, pure awareness, which is something we don't usually experience in daily life, or either through sleep, dream, or waking, or the usual states of consciousness that we go through. Because whenever we are conscious, we are usually conscious of something. I'm conscious of you, you're conscious of what I'm saying. If I close my eyes and I say I'm not conscious of anything, I will be conscious of something in the body, some memory, some feeling, something, some thought. So I'm always conscious of something. And where is this source of my awareness, my consciousness? Where is that platform which allows me to be conscious of something? And there is a state which we usually never experience, which is not what we call a relative state, which means a state that changes with situation and circumstances, but more of an absolute state, which means a state that is never changing. And that is what we call pure consciousness. Pure consciousness is a state where we are conscious, but there is no content in consciousness. We cannot even imagine that because all our life we live in being conscious of something. And how is it possible that consciousness be there without any content in consciousness? So that is the state which we call pure consciousness. In ancient tradition, it has a name that we can call Atma, or the self, the infinite pure self, being, awareness, Satchit Ananda, the sense of wholeness that is within us. And it's usually talked about in the literature, talked about in certain poets, certain philosophers, even some scientists. They have these moments of supreme satisfaction and great experience of peace. When scientists discover something, for example, they say, aha, this is, that's why the term has been called the aha experience, the experience of bliss, the experience of special moments in life. And many great sages and saints throughout history had these glimpses of these moments in their life, and many of them gave their entire life to get this experience. So what was really beautiful, and what attracted me, was that in this simple technique, which is very easy to practice, called transcendental meditation, you can systematically transcend. Transcend means to go beyond the surface level of the mind and reach that inner silence and inner peace and experience pure consciousness. So on the level of experience, it is absolutely supreme. Now, what is very interesting is that it's not just the experience. The experience is fine. I mean, one can have beautiful experiences. You see a nice view, you have a moment of peace, things are working well, you have slept well, and suddenly you go out and you have a beautiful landscape or some moment of inspiration, and you feel that inner peace and calmness, and it's great, and you want it to happen again. And now there is a technique that actually allows this to happen systematically, which means every day you can have it, morning and evening, by practicing this simple technique, which comes from the ancient knowledge of the Veda. And particularly it's a yoga of the mind, and allows the mind to settle down. So what I'm saying is that it's not just the experience. The experience is fantastic, and by itself it would be worth it. But what is great about it is that it changes your health, and we have many scientific research studies that have shown that when the mind goes so deep, the body rests very deeply, and it gains such a deep rest that not only the superficial fatigue goes away, but all the stresses and strains that have accumulated throughout life, really, and maybe before, who knows, that are there, get dissolved. And we see this in real students, for example, having better grades at school, better performance, even they improve their intelligence quotient, which normally we think it doesn't improve, but it's set for everyone. At the same time, this deep inner rest and quality of rest removes the fatigue, which means the body is much healthier, and we have seen research that shows there is a better immune system, fighting disease, there is less proneness to falling sick. Many people, and it's now used in many organizations. American Heart Association gives it for stroke and heart disease prevention, for blood pressure reduction, asthma, diabetes, etc., etc. There are hundreds of scientific research studies about the health benefits of it. And then behavior improves because one is clearer, one is feeling better, one's health is better, there is rejuvenation. And at the same time, this behavior of the individual and this consciousness of the individual has an influence on society as a whole. Because although we are seeming separate individuals, that inner self is the self of everyone and everything. It's not just my individual inner self. That is the beauty of the ultimate knowledge that this brings. And that means that we are all ultimately one in that what we call the unified field. And there is very interesting research in physics that shows that the whole universe is actually based on one field, which then appears as different fields, electromagnetism and weak forces, gravitational forces, etc., are all based on a field. And that field is a field of consciousness, a field of awareness. And that is who we truly are. So that's what we say, as we heard in the tape, know thyself. Know thyself doesn't mean just know your limitations or your qualities, what you can do, what you cannot do, but know that you are the infinite ocean of pure being, that you are the self, not only of yourself, but the self of everything. And because we access this and enliven it, it changes the collective consciousness in society. And that's a very important factor that we are also working on now. And that is how much this program can reduce conflict between nations and create reduction in problems in society, even for those who don't practice transcendental meditation. Because when you have a collectivity of people and their awareness is settled, then that influences the stress in society, which is reduced. And then you have less conflict, less accidents of the roads, less crime, less improper behavior. And this is not just theoretical. We've studied this scientifically. There are 50 scientific studies, and many of them published in the best journals, that show that when a number of people practice this program together, there is actual reduction in accidents of the road, crime, improved behavior of people, greater prosperity and greater feeling of peace in society. And we have extended this to the world population with very scientific parameters that actually show in a very mathematical scientific way that when the square root of 1% of a population practices this program together, this effect happens. So there is like a scientific, exact mathematical relations. So we thought, why not do it for the whole world? And we had these experiments like some 20 years ago or so, even more. Yeah, now we are thinking time is going like 30 years ago, and we repeated it another time. And we have studied the results of that, and they were very systematically happening. Now, why I'm adding this is because today we face problems with war and conflict, and there are so many players in this wars and conflict, and they try to solve it on the level of the material aspect of life, on the level of I can hit you more, you can hit me more, I give you arm, you give me arms, I do sanctions, you do sanctions, you do this, I do this, thinking that this will ultimately solve. But the solution is going to be not on the level of material, but on the level of consciousness. You know, I use this many times because when there was the first war, they said, First World War, they said, okay, this will be the war that ends all wars. But then we got the Second World War, and then they created United Nations and UNESCO. And then the Charter, they recognized the whole wisdom of the whole world came together and said, enough is enough, we're not going to have a war anymore. And in the Charter, they wrote, since wars are fought in the mind of humans, it is in the minds of humans that we have to find peace, that we have to create peace. Because after all, it's a decision making, you know, it's just between just evaluating things properly and finding the solutions and being reassured and being peaceful and being friendly and then there is no need for really war. It's just when you look at it, you find it's completely illogical what happens. But, people's stress and conflicts come into the question, and the fears and the anxieties and all of that, and then it explodes into kind of conflict. And if we change the consciousness of not only the individual, but through individuals of the society, then we can really find solutions. It's like you are walking around and it's dark, it's very dark, then people fall on each other and break their legs and they blame each other. You fell on me, you hit me, I hit you. No, I didn't see you, you saw me. And then if you bring the light, then we don't fall into each other, we don't break our legs, and we don't hit each other. And that consciousness is light, is the light of life. So, based on all of this, I gave all my interests and science and knowledge into studying consciousness. What is consciousness? Because this technology is a technology of consciousness, and that's why we talk about consciousness. That's why I have a book called One Unbounded Ocean of Consciousness that actually studies what is ultimate reality and how we deal with it. And ultimate reality, I am 100% convinced, is consciousness, is a pure consciousness, then appears as matter in so many ways. And this book explains how this happens. So it's not just theoretical, but it's practical steps of logic that explain how the material world emerges from the experience of consciousness, from being consciousness. And not only theoretically, but practically, technologies of consciousness, such as transcendental meditation, that improve individual consciousness, enlarges individual consciousness, settles consciousness, and therefore allows all these benefits to happen, and allows the benefits on the individual level as well as on the level of society and on the level of the whole world. So thank you for your listening, and it's great to have you here.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to thank Dr. Tony Nader for taking out your time from your busy schedule to be with us here today. And I'm sure you all would be agreeing with me that his presence has added more value to this wonderful evening. And I'm sure you too had a very wonderful evening spent with us. And before I leave, I would like to share one of the favorite quote of Maharishi, which says, "Fulfillment is structured in achievement. Achievement is structured in action. Action is structured in thinking. Thinking is structured in knowledge. And knowledge is structured in consciousness." This is one of my favorite quotes. If anyone would like to ask any question to Dr. Tony Nader, please. Yeah.
As you talk about Atma, it means to believe in soul. If you go to all the religions, scriptures, book, soul is definite. When you talk about consciousness, if I talk about me, my consciousness is related to my mind or my soul. And if it's related to the soul, is there any transmission directed, integrated with the God, third power that's saying or inculcate to my consciousness? Thank you.
Ultimate consciousness is pure being. And when we say Atma, it means having an individual kind of consciousness. So there is Atma, there is Ahamkar. Ahamkar is the ego, the self, the sense of self. And Atma is actually a term of saying that this is ultimate self, the self of everything. And the self of everything itself is pure consciousness, it's pure being. Now, the specificity of individual is individual consciousness. So there are individual dynamics of consciousness that create the sense of individuality, which we can call the soul, the actual construct of consciousness. And then it reflects itself, it appears, it manifests itself into intellect, mind, feelings, and even the physical world. So all of these other layers are expressions that are more on the gross level of the subtle level, which is itself pure consciousness, pure being.
I was just feeling if you could have had a feeling of the meditation with you here, some real experience of meditation in some way.
There are different ways of meditating. There is contemplation. We can take a thought or a prayer or a religious, spiritual feeling and think about it, and that will be some kind of meditation. So many people think of meditation as being some kind of thought about an idea, and that would be what we call contemplation. So there is contemplation, so we can say, okay, now let's close the eyes and contemplate about oneness, about being, about wholeness, or about love, about feeling. And this is one type of meditation. There is another type of meditation which is called concentration, which means you take some object and you prevent the mind from going anywhere else.
Is that consciousness, that lightening set of mind, getting the peace, tolerance, is this related to Vedic music, the swar, udat, anudat, twarit, or something else, or is this something, sound and music is also related to this consciousness?
You see a beautiful landscape and it makes you feel enlivened and happy, and that is feeling of a beautiful harmony through the vision. Now, if there is music that is harmonious and soothing and helps the body to settle, that is also very, very good, and it does help and does create many people through very fine, beautiful music. They can feel so good and they can have a healing process. And we suggest and we use music as a healing modality also. It's part. What it heals also, though, it's actually consciousness, because if you're not conscious of the music, if you're not aware of the sense of harmony, if you're asleep, it might still help you, but because your body is being helped, but the maximum help comes from the awareness, consciousness. So even music is working on consciousness.
What I understood from you today is that consciousness is a movement from content to no content. Is that right?
But it's consciousness that is put on a narrow perspective. Just you look at the flower and your consciousness becomes the flower. So your consciousness takes the qualities of the object that you are looking at. If you think of a thought, your consciousness adapts to the thought. So consciousness has specific values and has less specific values. So you can't be conscious of principles, let's say conscious of peace, or consciousness of goodness or of love, or this is a more expanded kind of less specific quality of consciousness.
My question to you is how you relate consciousness with spirituality?
Yeah, consciousness is spiritual. If we define, depends what we define spirituality. Some people define spirituality as being religious. It's different. Religious is a belief in a certain system and a way of approaching God and praying to God and like that, which is great. Everyone has their religion, their belief, their way of approaching the divine. Fine. Now, spiritual means that which is not material, if you like. So if you want to define it like this, that there is something material concerns, material things, I own this, I buy this, I taste this, I eat this, I like this. All that we perceive and touch and experience through the senses is material in general. But we can say that there are things that are not material, that are spiritual, such as love, such as peace, kind of concepts that are not really material, but conceptual on a feeling level, on an intellectual level, if you like, and on the purest level possible. So consciousness is not material. And if you have such a definition of spiritual being something that is not material but spiritual, yes, consciousness is not material. Consciousness is spiritual.